I'm Will.
And I'm Steven.
And this is the Post-P Chronicles. So, Steven, what do we have going on today?
We got a very special guest, a very special episode. We got a man that's traveled all the way from Northern California, Justin Becker. What's up, Justin?
What's up, Steve?
What's going on, Justin? Man, thanks for being here, man.
Justin, tell us your story. Tell us about your upbringing real quick. Where you have a troubled upbringing, your parents in your life, drugs. What was your upbringing? What was going on?
So I was actually raised in Riverside County, California.
Me too.
I come from a small town. It's like, you know, it's below Idlewild, but above Palm Springs, and it's a real low cost of living area. And, you know, we were poor there where I grew up at. And my dad, he was an alcoholic. He's still an alcoholic to this day. My mom did well, but like once I hit around middle school, she fell off and started drinking when she lost both of her parents. So I've never really had the kind of mentors that you would want in your life to set you up for success, you know, to tell you you're supposed to go to college, to do this and do that. And so growing up with my dad, he was always drinking. He had a good heart, but he couldn't stay sober, you know? And so in my childhood, I think I was like at the age of 4, and, you know, I watched him fight with the cops for the first time in my life. And I watched the cops beat up my dad and throw him in the back of a cop car, and then he started trying to kick out the rear window, so they pulled him out and hog-tied him up, right? And that was the first time that I had ever seen that, and that was like when I realized, like, I don't like the cops, right? They're beating up my dad. I'm 4. I don't really understand why they're doing it, but they are, right? And at that time in my mind, that's kind of when I labeled them like, yeah, I would never be a cop, right? They're kind of like the enemy.
Right. So obviously, if that's your earliest memory at 4 years old, confrontations with the police, beating up on your dad, and then, like you just said, you didn't have the most positive role models or positive at all role models in your life growing up, I guess that can lead to not the best behavior in your early childhood years. So let's fast forward it to maybe to your teen years. What is that looking like? What is your teen years looking like?
So, well, I ended up in CPS because of that. You know, my mom was able to come get me like a week later. My teen years, my mom and stepdad, they got divorced, ended up in CPS again because of that whole situation. And that was probably when I was like 13. So that was my second time ending up in CPS's hands, right?
For those of you who don't know, CPS, Child Protective Services, obviously.
And it ended up getting dropped, but it made me feel like their divorce and their marriage ending was because of me, right? And so I kind of carried that guilt and that regret, not understanding at the time that it had nothing to do with me.
Right.
And I utilized that pain and suffering as a negative self-sabotaging tool to get high in middle school. And I started smoking weed. And when we moved from California to Arizona, like, I grew up in South Phoenix on 4th Street in Rozier, right? And by the time we moved to a nicer area, I was already almost in high school, right? I was the only white kid in my elementary school. I was like probably the 4th white kid in my middle school. And it was just totally different culture, and opened me up to just drastically different environments, right? People that are using drugs, selling drugs, they're gangbanging. Just a different culture, not something that's conducive to a successful future. So I would say in high school for me, because my mom went off the deep end, she was drinking, she was dating young dudes that are selling drugs and making money. And it opened me up to an environment and a lifestyle that I seen. I was like, nobody's going to help me get a backpack. Nobody's going to help me get, you know, shoes for the first day of school, or fresh jeans, or get a haircut. And so that's when I started selling pills and coke and drugs. And it wasn't because I wanted to be a drug dealer. It was because I wanted to be able to provide for myself. And at the time, I'm 14, right?
Right.
So I tried to get a job, but, you know, that ain't working. You're working 6 days a week, making $7.25 an hour. Back
Not
in 06. No, not cutting. So
Now, you also said you moved around a lot. How many times did you move around in high school?
I would say from elementary school to high school, I probably moved 35 times, whether it wasn't because we couldn't pay our rent or it was because of one thing or another. I mean, there was a point where when I was a freshman in high school, me and my mom were living in the same bedroom, sleeping in the same bed. I'm 14, 15. And it's exhausting, you know? There's no stability when you live like that.
I can, so I just want to put this all into perspective, because obviously one of these things does not make a criminal, obviously. So we're not saying that.
Right.
But let's be real. seeing your parents, your dad get beat up by the police, being an alcoholic, not having the most positive role models, moving 35 times before you're 14 years old.
Mom dating drug
dealers, all these different things going on at your young age. The instability of that life as a kid. Come on.
And nobody looking out for you but yourself. Your
But
mom
yourself.
and dad aren't looking out for you.
Right.
You gotta by any means possible survive.
Right, right. I mean, I had my stepdad, but he was from afar. When they got divorced, she didn't want him around, so he didn't come around.
Right.
And the people that I did have in my life were not teaching you the morals and ethics that people in society abide by, right? Like their moral compasses were over here when people in society, their moral compasses are over here. So what I thought was right and correct was completely wrong, right?
So you moved through 14, 15, now you're 17 years old. Did you end up graduating from high school?
No, so I ended up getting kicked out of like 3 high schools, went to alternative schools, and then like the last alternative school that I went to, bro, there'd be riots after school, there'd be like gang fights in the hallway, and so I just dropped out. I was like, I'm done. I can't do this. I just get my GED.
So you have siblings too. How are they affected by this? I mentioned you had a brother and something happened to him.
Yeah, so my older brother RJ, he he's a war veteran, and I seen him cry twice in my entire life. He's a tougher dude. He's successful, and I came home one day and he was sitting on the couch. He cried when he left and joined the service at 17, and then when I came home, he was like real emotional, and I'm like, "What's wrong, bro?" And he stands up and he gives me a hug, and he's like, he's crying, and he's like, "Jeremy's dead, bro. They found him dead." And I'm like, "What do you mean?" He's like, "They found him in Lake Elsinore with a syringe in his arm."
And Jeremy is
our brother. So he's my brother and sister's brother, and we all grew up together, right? And so I had a deep connection with my brother and my sister, and I knew Jeremy, right? And to see him in that pain and just losing people to drugs or prison, it's hard,
So you say you got your GED.
Yeah.
17. You're out of school. Now you're an adult. By society standards, you're an adult. What's going on,
So at the time, I actually didn't have my GED. I was with some friends. We went to go do something stupid. Ended up getting shot at, and it was like really hot out in Arizona. So my brother offered me to move to Connecticut, right? So I moved to Connecticut for like a year and a half, had some structure in my life, got a job on the submarine base, and did well and got clean. And then like I would say probably 13 months after being out there, I relapsed. And my brother's like, "Nah, you can't be here. I got kids. He's in the service. This could risk his job," right? So I ended up coming back to Arizona at 19, get clean again, and end up getting into like the sales industry, business to business. But even then, I still struggle with addiction, right? I end up getting high. I get bored. And at the time, I didn't realize that I just had so much trauma from my childhood that I was trying to plug a hole that was unpluggable. Like I had to face that adversity that I dealt with growing up. And it wasn't until I went to prison that I was actually able to do that.
So a lot of people do this, whether it's substance abuse, relationship, love, drugs, gangs. They have this void in their heart and they try to fill it with superficial things of this world, right? And obviously your vice was drugs. So you just said you went to prison. What was the actions that led to you going to prison?
So, I was young, got engaged young, had my son like 6 months after I met my ex-fiance. And it was a lot. I was 20 years old, taking care of her and a kid, working 55, 60-hour weeks. And I started using again, right? Opiates. Opiates were my downfall. And when I would use them, it would give me that extra push to work 55 hours. When most people are tired, I'm on the phone just running, making good money, right? And when times were tough and I didn't have money and I needed drugs or I needed money to pay rent, I would go and rob drug dealers at gunpoint, Right. And it gave you like a certain kind of rush that was just uncomparable with anything else. I don't even know how to explain it. It's like how you get addicted to drugs, you get addicted to that adrenaline. And so from there, I would say I probably got clean 5 or 10 different times, whether it was for 3 months, 6 months, a year. I did the Suboxone clinics. I did the methadone clinics. I moved away and came back. And it was like no matter what I did, I couldn't beat it, And I would say when I was about 22 and a half, I got clean. And me and my children's mother, we had gotten to like an incident at Tempe Marketplace in Arizona, which is like an outdoor shopping mall. The police responded. I had some hash on me. When I left, I buried it under some rocks, waited for her by a car. She didn't come for like 20 minutes. I go back over. The cops got her hemmed up, right? They come ask me if I'm Justin Becker. I'm like, yeah, I'm Justin Becker. And the cop pulls out the hash and he's like, is this yours? And I'm like, nah, that's not mine, you know? And he points to this lady on his patio eating at the restaurant. And he's like, well, she said she seen you buried under that rock. And I'm like, nah, that's not mine. He's like, dude, it's just some hash. Like, just admit it, or we're gonna have to start pulling tapes, right? So me, young, I don't know nothing, right? I'm like, all right, whatever. You know, so he writes marijuana, voids it out. I get arrested. Everything gets dropped. I get released the next day. But it was kind of like an awakening in a sense, right? And so I got clean, got a pretty good job at a company called Lease Station in Ahwatukee, Arizona, as a finance broker, doing business essential equipment leasing. And I was doing very well at that company, building a working capital division from the ground up. And one day, my boss's boss calls me into his office, and he's like, hey, we got to let you go. And I'm like, well, why? And he's like, we can't tell you. Like, you have to have your lawyer contact our lawyer. He's like, you can't even go get your stuff from your desk. We're going to mail it to you, right? And I'm like, nah, I'm going to go get it. Like, you come with me or I'm going to cause a scene. So they let me get my stuff, right? Because I had all kinds of workout stuff. Right. A lot of stuff, pictures of my kids. So I got it, found out a week later, I had a court date in Arizona for a class 4 felony for a hash possession. Hash. This is back in 2014. Right?
Life derailed again. Because of hash.
Literally. It's not even the opiates. That's what's crazy. And so I lose my job. I start to lose everything. I have a lot of bills and responsibilities, right? At the same time, I'm actually helping out one of my mom's old boyfriends. And he's using, and it's not his fault. Like, I'm a grown man. I made the choice to use, and I started using again because I was around that environment, right? And so I became a product of my environment again.
Right.
And I couldn't get a job because of that pending felony. I signed to do a diversion program, but until that year was up, it's still sitting there as a class 4 felony. I went to like 5 or 6 job interviews. Nobody would hire me. And I've always been real good with interviews and getting jobs. And so it was just kind of defeating. When I was younger, I would self-sabotage. Like, I was the dude who was like, I don't give a fuck. You know what I mean? Constantly smart ass. And that was my go-to line. You could tell me any wisdom or knowledge you wanted, and I'll just look you dead in the face and be like, I don't give a fuck. Because I gave the most fucks. You know what I mean? And that was my coping skill, to act like I didn't, right? And so I started committing crime, setting up like, you know, boosting, nothing major, maybe a couple residentials. And we got these eBay accounts. We're boosting, selling, you know, tens of thousands of dollars of supplements through sole proprietorships on eBay. And at the same time, I'm hanging out with somebody who is from like the Michoacan cartel. He'll come into town and he'll pick up like 80 keys of meth and 20 keys of heroin once a month. And when he would, we would party on his dime, you know, go to downtown Phoenix, go to the Hilton, go to the casinos, and he was being watched, right? And so a couple months later, you know, I notice I'm being followed on the freeway, so I get off the freeway, and there's a cop in the left turn lane. When I drive by him, he pops out behind me. I go, make a right on the street, and pin it down the street. By the time he turns the corner, I'm 50 yards away. I'm going to this abandoned house that my buddy owns, right? He lights me up. I go through the fence. There's dogs on this property. So long story long, I hide out in this house for like 8 hours. The cops are all over looking for me, right? They end up giving up. When I come out of hiding in the morning to put my battery in my phone, I call my stepdad and I'm like, hey, did anybody come looking for me last night? And he's like, yeah. He's like, a whole task force of U.S. Marshals showed up at the house. He's all, they wanted to search the house. He's like, your mom told me not to tell you. She wants you to go to jail because I'm doing bad, you know?
Right.
Like, I'm at the point where I'm so strung out on drugs that I've never even done in my entire life.
So you think your mom wanted you to go to jail not because she was mad at you, because she wanted to save your life?
Exactly, trying to save you.
Definitely.
Yeah.
Not in a negative way.
Right.
But, like, It's either jail or death.
There's no other
Right.
option for my son. I'd
Right.
rather have him locked
I'd
up.
definitely rather have my son in jail where I know where he's at
Right.
than dead.
No, I agree. And so my stepdad's like, you should probably get out of town. So, I sell my gun, sell all my stolen shit. And I head out to Cali. And I'm out in Cali for like 2 weeks. And I just get super dope sick. Like, I mean, chills, shakes, throwing up. I mean, it's not fun. I should have checked myself into a hospital, but I didn't. And so I come up with this just genius idea. Where can I get, enough drugs to never be sick again, right? A pharmacy. Like, in my warped state of mind at that time, that seemed like a great idea,
Aha moment.
Yeah, aha, you're going to ruin your whole life moment.
Yeah.
So it's like 2 a.m. I'm drinking. I'm doing Xanax. And I'm out at my dad's out there in like Yucca Valley, California. And so I take off. The first pharmacy I try to break into, it's got like the metal thing behind the door. So you could break the window, but you're not going to get through. The alarm's going off. So I take off. I wake up. I don't even remember this, but I wake up in front of this other pharmacy called New Pharmacy in Yucca Valley, California. And I sit in the parking lot. And I'm contemplating robbing this pharmacy, right? And all I got is a big kitchen knife, like from the Scream movie. And, I got a long sleeve shirt on, a hat, a bandana, and I actually take off and make a right like I'm going to leave. And then I'm like, man, I lost my kids. I lost my house. I lost my cars. I lost everything that means anything to me. I have nothing.
Now, you say you lost everything. You hit the pharmacy.
So I hit the pharmacy. So I actually pull back in, glove up, go in there, jump over the counter, lay the pharmacy down.
With the knife.
Bust a little white track. Like
From Scream.
Scream. Bust a little white track like I see Cotton Xanax bars like just tripping, right?
Right.
And I'm nervous. They're nervous. Everybody gets on the ground. And I end up like leaving with like $50,000 worth of narcotics, right? Don't get caught. Get away. They don't have no pictures of me. So I take off. I'm out in the desert and I go by this people's house that I know out there and I just get this bad vibe like they're going to rob me, right? And they end up giving me something to drink. And I remember it had like a yellowish tint to it. And I was like, nah, I'm not drinking that. And the problem was I'm so out of it, right? I go and rob this pharmacy with a quarter tank of gas. Like, so I need gas. Like, I can't just drive back home. Like, I got to figure out how to get gas. I didn't take no money. All I got is narcotics, right? And so I dip off from there. And in my warped state of mind, I think the police are chasing me, dude. So I take off. I'm going like 80 miles an hour across the desert, crash into some dude's fence. Big old piece of wood comes through the window, misses my face by like this much. Seriously, looked like a bowling ball went through the window. So I hop out. I'm standing on my hood, looking at half of my front end in his backyard. This dude comes out with a gun and fires it off in the air, right? Swear to God, this is a real story. So I'm tripping. So I hop back in the car. It's still in drive, stalled out. I throw it in park, start it up, take off again.
With the big piece of wood still right there in your face.
It's still in the window and everything. Serious, I can't even see the whole window spider web. And I think those people drugged me straight up because I'm tripping. Like, this is not normal.
Right.
And so I'm going like 80 miles an hour across the desert. The cops were called to that, right? And I end up hitting this tree. No seatbelt on, nothing. I wake up laying on the steering wheel. My knees are messed up. I get out, and I just take off running across the desert. And I'm running across the desert for like 4 hours. I'm dehydrated, man. And so there's like this weird post office out there, like the size of like a shed, right? And so I'm just tripping. Like, I get up on top of the shed, and somebody comes out. They're like, do you need help? I'm like, I need a flashlight and water, right? And so they bring me, this is like some tweaker stuff. That's what I'm telling you. I was out of my mind. They bring me a flashlight and some water, right? I swear to God.
Good people.
Good
Samaritans.
people.
Yeah.
Good Christian people, right? And they're like, we're going to have to pray for this dude for sure. Get the church down here. And so I take off through the desert. The cops are all over the desert. They're looking for me now, right? And I'm so dehydrated. I'm like avidly hallucinating.
Right.
Like, I don't know if it's because of what those people gave me to drink or what, if it's just everything adding up. I'm in withdrawal. I took all kinds of the pills that I had stolen, right? And crazy thing is they never found those pills. They never. So this is what's messed up. So this pharmacy I robbed, right? I still got the clothes on, okay? So I'm running across the desert. I take my shirt off. Sounds kind of crazy. Take my pants off, right? So by the time they catch me, I'm in my boxers, and that's it. But the thing is, they weren't able to use any of that against me in that case. Out of the 3 witnesses from that pharmacy, they never found the weapon, any of the clothes, any of the narcotics, right? And out of the 3 witnesses, only 2 of them picked me right in the line, or only 1 of them picked me right in the lineup. So it was to my favor that I had done that, right? And so I'm out there hallucinating. They finally find me, tackle me. I get up and run again. They tackle me again. They take me to their cop car, and I'm like so dehydrated. I drink like 15 cops' water bottles. Like it's that bad, right? And I keep passing out over and over and over. So they race me to an ambulance. Like I think I'm gonna die. And I black out, and I wake up in the hospital. And I'm in the hospital probably for like a night. And I have so much water in me, like I can't piss. It's terrible, right? They have to catheter me twice because my bladder is about to explode. That was like the worst experience ever. And for 2 weeks after that, it was all bad. Bad.
So suffice it to say, you went to jail.
I went to jail.
You went to jail for
3 first degree strong arm robberies at that time.
And how much time did you get?
So I fought it, ended up taking the world's dumbest deal. Didn't have any family that was willing to help me. Didn't have nothing but a public defender. Had never been in trouble with the law. In Arizona, there's not strikes. I didn't understand what strikes were. So I get them to give me 2.5, an 8-year joint suspension, drop the weapons charges, and I signed for 3 second-degree strong-arm robberies. At this time, this is in 2015, when all the prisons were extremely overcrowded, right? And so if you sign and you've never been to prison, you're doing county prison.
Right.
So I end up doing 2.5 in the county jail.
Which is terrible.
Right? It really is. No sun, no TV, no radio.
No contact visits.
$1.20 soups.
Oh, man. That's your whole canteen right there.
Yeah, for sure.
12 soups. Man.
No, you're not lying. So that was the first time that I had really ever been like introduced to, what it meant to be a Wood, or what it meant to run other or brother or Southsider, right? Because within the penal system in California, it's extremely segregated, right? The whites run with the whites, the blacks run with the blacks. The Southsiders, which are the Mexicans, right? Norteños, they all run with their own races. And so it's like when you come in, they ask you for your paperwork, who you're running with, and then there's a rep that runs the dorm, and they explain to you all the house rules. Each race, they have their own day that they clean. They have their own day that they can watch TV. And it's just a total culture shock, right, compared to normal society, because inside there, it is its own society in itself.
And then you begin to think this is normal. You become desensitized to it. Like, oh, this is just the way it is.
Right. The first time you see somebody get beat up, you're like, oh, wow, and then the second time you become a little more. Yeah. Then the third time you're like, that was a good one.
What? You start to critique and, so you sideline reporting and stuff. Yeah.
Sideline report?
Definitely.
Well, and then like you start to realize like, if you want to be a torpedo, which is somebody that they're going to send to go beat dudes up when, they mess up, they break the rules, etc. And when you go and you do that for the first time, like there's notoriety that comes with that. There's respect that comes with that. Especially when you don't look like you're that part, there's even more respect that comes with that. Especially when dudes come in that think they're hard and then end up getting beat up by a dude with a comb over or whatever. You know what I mean? And so, like, especially for whites specifically, like most of them are not in gangs in the streets, right? They come in from poor, impoverished families. They've never been a part of nothing in their entire lives. And they get this camaraderie and brotherhood effect, right, from these dudes in there. And these dudes capitalize on that. And they use these dudes up for everything they got. And by the time they figure it out, it's too late.
So now you're in prison, running with the Peckers, right?
So at this time, so I end up doing my county time.
Mm-hmm.
I get out, right? Stuck in California on parole.
Okay.
Go up to my dad's, end up catching some case for trying to collect some money for him for like a dirt bike. End up getting they're trying to give me 39 to life. So I'm out for 3 months. Catch this new case. I got 3 prior strikes. Now they're trying to charge me with a residential burglary.
Just to highlight that, because that 39 to life was for stealing a dirt bike.
Just a dirt bike.
$700 dirt bike.
A $700 dirt bike.
Facing life.
Facing 39 years to life. And you didn't rob anybody for that dirt bike. You broke in and got on the bike and rolled the bike off, right?
To a garage not attached to a house that nobody lived in. It was an illegal marijuana grow. Mm-hmm. They tried to say it was a residence because there was a hospital cot in there. Literally.
By no means are we excusing a crime.
No.
So let's make that clear. By no means are we excusing a crime.
The punishment doesn't fit the crime.
The punishment does not fit the crime. So go ahead.
Facing
you said
39 to life.
39
What's
to
going
life.
on?
39 to life. So I'm fighting this case for like a year. Within that time, I think I'm going to get life, right? Like legitimately, there was no offers for a year. I had to fire my lawyer, get a state appointed attorney, and that was when I got my first offer. And within that time period, I'm getting involved in the politics, right? I'm getting involved in the mentality that, hey, if I have to go upstate and I have to do the rest of my life in prison, like I want to make a name for myself, because in prison, there's one language, right? And it's universal. Violence. Mm-hmm. Right? And there's when you're on the main line, there's 2 sides to the table, right? There's the victim side and there's people who make the victims. Where do you want to sit?
And Will, what do you like to say?
I'm not going to be the victim.
Don't be a victim, right?
Don't be the victim.
Right. You can't.
That was my mantra. Don't be the victim.
Mm-hmm.
And so on the main line, that's how it is, right? You want to be with the dudes that make the victims, because the reality is you're going to know what's up constantly. Mm-hmm. They're going to come ask you for your advice when somebody's in trouble or a situation arises within your pod or your unit or your yard, right? And so I start to get indoctrinated in this ideology, something that I was never a part of. I grew up poor and impoverished, but not in a culture like that. And because of the way I grew up, it was easy, like I said earlier, to get indoctrinated into that because it felt good. We're going to church so that way when we come back, we can run up in another housing unit and beat somebody up who owes money to some dude that has nothing to do with me. And that's how warped your state of mind gets, right? And so as I'm in jail fighting this case, I'm getting in more fights. I'm doing more removals. I'm fighting with the cops. I don't care.
Getting more notoriety.
Right. And so I start to get further and further back. I go from, I like when I originally got arrested, I was in Unit 14, and this is at West Valley. And then I went to Unit 7, and then I went to Unit 8, which is the gang unit. And then I beat up this dude, got sent to the hole, right? Was in the hole for like a week. They send this dude to the hole. I'm in the hole for beating him up, and they sell us up. And by our politics, I'm not allowed to refuse a cellie. So we end up fighting again. The same cop who sent me to the hole, who probably set this whole thing up, is the first one to respond and breaks my arm while I'm fighting this dude on the top tier. And so that's basically the gist of it. Within that time period, I'm sending kites to the very back where the big homies are, right? Whether it's needle tips, razor blades, because they can't get any of that back there. I end up going from Unit 3 to Unit 6, and that's where I sat until I went upstate.
So I don't want to just brush over the severity of what you just went through. You went to the hole for beating somebody up. You know, beat him up pretty bad from the conversation we had. Beat him up pretty bad. So you went to the hole. You're sitting in the hole for a week. Now, the whole segregated housing unit, like that's where you're at. They bring your victim to the hole and put him in the cell with you. That, for anybody who doesn't understand, is a no-go. You don't do things like that.
Of course not.
You know,
sounds like a setup.
Sounds like a setup. So they put him in the cell with you already because of your politics. Any sane person, I don't want to be in a cell with you because I just beat you up. I don't know what you're going to do to me, but I can't turn you away because then I'll become the victim. So you have to move him in a cell with you. And then you fight again. And on top of that, the police that put you back there comes in And what you say, you was already proned out? You were laying on the ground, proned out.
Well, I was choking him out, and I had one arm again locked in the rail because he almost threw me off the top tier, right? And while I'm choking him out, they're downstairs like, get down, get down. Before they even hit the staircase, I let him go. He falls down. I back up like 5 feet from him, and then I prone out. I even got my hands behind my back, right?
Behind your back.
Literally, it's on camera. It was under investigation for 6 months. And the same cop, Areola, right, that had sent me to the hole was the first one up the staircase, took my left arm and chicken winged me. And if for those who don't know what chicken wing is where they take your arm and push it up like a chicken wing, and took it and pulled it literally above behind my head, tore all the ligaments in my arm, broke my ulna in half. I was fine from the fight, but had to go to the hospital and get a cast on my arm for like 7 months over that.
7 months. Incredible, to say the least. So you're in the hole. You get out the hole. You get off the cast. What's going on after this, man?
So I'm fighting this case. The first offer was like, they said 25 to life. I was like, did you bring a pen, or like, was I supposed to bring my own? Like, you're crazy. Like, so I'm like, no, I'm not doing it. Right at the time, I think I'm 24. And so I leave, I come back a couple weeks later, and they offer me 16 years, right? And I'm like, nah, I'm not doing it. Like, I'll be 40 when I get out. That's crazy, because I'm getting sentenced as a violent offender because of my past, right? And so that's 85%. And this is when Prop 57 had just, enacted. There was really no love. They were manipulating that law still, right? That's why it's revised every year. And so I'm like, no.
So for those who don't know, Prop 57 is...
Which one is Prop 57?
So Prop 57 is actually a broad proposition. Yeah. It covers nonviolent offenders, lifers, youth offenders. And what it did was it made it where if you were at 85%, you had nothing coming. You were doing 85% of your sentence. And so it didn't promote positive programming. What's 15 more percent? If we're doing 20 years, we might as well do what we want, right? And so what it did was it made it where you went from 85 to 80. And then you could get 12 weeks off a year for milestones.
Educational merit credits.
Yep. And then you could get, I think it was, now it's 40 days off a year for rehabilitative achievement credits, right?
So it's almost like if you're doing the work on your end, we're going to support you on the back end and take time off.
It's restorative justice at its best.
Now they moved it from 80% to 66%, which is pretty big.
That's a big drop.
It's a big drop, yeah.
That's a big deal. It's essentially... If you're a violent offender, you could do less than half of your time if you do what you need to do.
Because then if you drop down to level 2 as a violent offender, you can drop the P code, go to a level 2, a fire camp, and be doing half your time.
Yep. Or you just earn 12 weeks off a year, right? Yeah. And then you get them another 40 days. That's 4 months right there.
So you obviously didn't have that option. So what did you have to go with?
So in the beginning... So in the beginning, I didn't, right? But then it started to change slowly. And then it changed where we could get time off. So throughout my sentence, I was able to earn time off through college.
So you took the 16 years.
No. So that's what I was getting to. Sorry.
Okay, let's hear
so I fight in this case, go back. They offer me 11 or 12 years. I'm like, no. Come back again. They offer me 12 years with 3 years time served consecutive to do 9. The crime that I did was a 2-year crime. I got a 2-year double up. Plus a 5-year prison prior. I had 7 years in enhancements on a 2-year crime.
Yes, people, that you heard that correctly. That is crazy. He's doing more time in enhancements than the actual crime he was convicted of. Yeah, continue.
Doing 9 years for stealing a $700 dirt bike. I could go shoplift and get less time. Straight up.
Hey, if it's under 1,000, you get no time.
Man.
Yeah, yeah, it's crazy. So I signed my deal. And this is what's crazy, right? So you could fort with. And what that means is if you fort with, you don't got to come back to court. You sign and you go upstate 2 weeks. You go up to prison 2 weeks later. And so I'm like, look, dude, I want to get out of here. I've been in the county for almost 2 years. It's miserable, right? It's just something else. It's something you can't understand unless you've personally lived it and experienced it. The COs, they're deputies, right? They're going to be real cops, and they're really cops.
Yeah.
And so I fort with. And it's crazy because had I had not Fort With, I probably wouldn't have experienced what I did when I went upstate. So I Fort With, I go upstate. I'm upstate for like 2 weeks. I land in Delano on B Yard, Building 2. And I know a lot of these dudes because they're all from San Bernardino County, right? Like, we've been in housing units together. We've put in work together. And so these dudes know.
You got a little reputation already.
Right.
Yeah.
Right. I show up. They give me a big bag of store. They give me bags of coffee. They're showing me love. Anything I need, all I have to do is ask. Hygiene, whatever, right? And so I'm there for, I want to say, 12 days, right? And the cell that I'm in, to the right of me, they're white boys, and they're porters, which porters are basically inmates that come out and they help the staff serve chow. They clean the day room, mop, sweep, do the showers. The cell on the left of me, they're white boys, and they're porters, right? And then, so I noticed after being there for I'm going to say 12 days, that these dudes that I know, they're not coming to my door anymore, right? And when I had first showed up, I had this cellmate. His name was Alan Fagerson. And he was an older dude. He was 57, had long white hair. And he was kind of a J-cat, which means he was mentally ill. He wasn't all the way there. Nice dude, goofy, but just kind of had weird quirks about him, right? Yeah. And so they had told me when I showed up, they're like, look, just be chill with your celly. Don't hurt him or nothing. We're going to get him moved. I'm like, oh, okay, that's cool. And so after 12 days, I noticed these dudes are not on my door. I can feel the tension from the other races in the building. And I'm seeing these porters on other people's doors, and they're looking back at my door, right? And so I'm like, oh, somebody's getting whacked or somebody's getting checked, right? Something's up. And so I asked my neighbor, I'm like, hey, what's up, bro? Am I good? Am I going to get checked? And when you get checked, normally you have to fight two dudes at the same time, right? And I'm like, if I'm going to get checked, it's cool. Just give me a heads up, though. Don't do nothing janky. And so he's like, nah, you're good. You're good. And so another day goes by, and I could just feel it. And so finally he's like, look, bro, you're good. Stop tripping. You keep tripping. You're going to get checked, And so you got a question?
Nope.
Okay. So I go out to day room. This is my 13th day in prison. And there's this dude, Doc and Flea, and they sit me down in the day room. They're actually cellmates, and they live on the bottom tier straight across from my cell, right? And they call me over to the table. Doc is sitting directly in front of me, and Flea is sitting to the right of me. And Flea looks at me, and he's like, you know what's going to happen tomorrow, right? And I was like, you guys are going to move my celly? And he's like, nah, your celly's going to fucking die tomorrow. And I'm like, oh, okay. Well, why, And before I could even ask why, though, he's like, I want to know if you'll do it. And in prison, I'm not a skinhead. I'm running with the woods, right? So technically, if I'm not in debt, I don't know money, I don't have to do it. I'm not a frontline soldier. And so you're still kind of in a situation, though, where if you say no, you could get stabbed for it, depending on where you're at or who's running the yard, right? And so I'm like, nah, I'm not doing it. I got 4 strikes. I got 9 more years to do. I got 12 years total. And he's like, no, it's good. He's like, I've already got a hitter. I just wanted to see if you would do it. And I'm like, well, why? And so Flea looks at Doc, and they look at each other. And that's when I knew something was up, because it was they were making eye contact to figure out what to tell me, And Doc looks at me, and he's like, oh, he has a 20-year-old charge, right? And at the time, I didn't know it. He did have a 20-year-old charge, but it was for lewd conduct with a prostitute in the 90s. It wasn't some sex charge. He wasn't a child molester. He wasn't a rapist. And what had really...
Bought a prostitute.
Yeah.
Yeah. And now you were telling me, and Will, you were telling me, right? If you're going to carry out some crime, show me the paperwork, right? There needs to be evidence of what they did before we can move on it.
Right. Right. And that was the thing. I had seen his paperwork. It went 25 years back for all his charges. And that's why I thought they were lying from the jump, right? And I asked them, I was like, well, where's the paperwork at? And they're like, oh, we don't have it, but we got word. And I'm like, well, where's the kite? And oh, we flushed it. We don't want to get caught with it. And so at this point, they're like, there's a green light. If this dude walks off this yard, every white boy on this yard is in trouble. And so they're like, just be cool. Don't go back to your cell and start tripping. And I'm like, nah, I'm good. I got you, right? And so at the time, I don't feel like this is right. This dude's 57. He has a walker, and he has scoliosis. There's no honor in killing this dude, right? And there's no paperwork to justify what they want to do.
Right.
And so it's 5 p.m. This is July 19th of 2017. So I go back to the cell. I'm in the cell and I'm like tripping. I'm trying to figure out what to do. I want to tell this dude, but because he's mentally off, I don't want him to be like, well, what's up, homeboy? Come get it, and start tripping and get us both whacked because we're surrounded, right?
And you would have been telling him.
Right, exactly. Yeah. And there's porters that are white to the left and right of us, and the dude's whacking them straight across from us. We're surrounded. And so in my mind, like I had always been taught, you have your cellies back, right? Especially if who's ever trying to get him's in the wrong. And so I feel like this moral dilemma. And so I'm up all night. And I don't know what to do. I got 9 more years left to serve, right? If I don't get help, then I'm going to spend the rest of my life in prison for conspiracy to commit murder. If I do get help, I'm most likely going to get killed and be labeled as a snitch because at the end of the day, I don't know anything about the S&Y side, right? When you're on the main line, they brainwash you to believe that everybody over there is a child molester, a rapist, and a weirdo. You've never been over there, so you don't know. So what do you believe? What they tell you, right?
So you're damned if you do, damned if you don't. If you tell him you're a narc,
right,
you're snitch. If you don't tell him, it's an unjustified murder. And if you don't tell him and you kind of pull back, it's conspiracy, right?
For sure. 100%.
So either way, you're screwed at this point, right?
Either way, the train's going to wreck. It's just how messed up do you want to be when it wrecks? Seriously.
So what's going through your mind at this time?
So I'm playing it out, getting help, not getting help, letting him get whacked. And no matter what I can think of, like, there's no right answer, right? And so, like, I just start praying about it. And at the time, like, I was not close with God, right? But he's always been there in my life. I just was blind. You know what I mean? I didn't stay focused on him. I was more focused on what was going on in the world and in my life. And so I'm up all night. And so like, I'm like, you know what? I'm going to get help. Right. So I make this sign on a 22 form, which is like, you could request for envelopes or to see the doctor. And I put like in big bold letters, like, please help now. Like me and my cellies' lives are in danger. Like we need to be moved. And then I'm like, nah, I can't snitch. Like, so I rip it off and flush it. Right. And so I'm drinking coffee all night, tripping. So like the night rolls over, it's probably 4 a.m. I take a Title 15, which is like this book they give you, the rules and regulations guide. It's like an inch thick, maybe an inch and a half. And I put one on the right side of my ribs and I put one on the left side of my ribs and I tear my sheet and I wrap it. Because in my mind, I've been drinking coffee all night, so I'm still tripping too, right? I'm thinking like these dudes are going to whack me for refusing to whack him, right? Maybe they're going to whack me and then whack him, like a diversion, because they do that kind of stuff. And so morning comes, I can't even eat. Like my stomach is just, it's in butterflies. Right. And so I give Alan my tray and I'm just staring at him like, damn, like
oblivious. He's just eating it all up.
Happy, go lucky dude. I'm not going to say he was the best person, but I think that he was mentally ill.
And he didn't deserve what they wanted to do to him.
Right.
Yeah. Once again, the punishment didn't fit the crime.
No, not at all. And there's no honor in it. You're killing an old man. Like, how does that make you hard? That makes you weak in my mind, in my eyes. So they release yard, right? This is reception. So,
let's hold that right there. So what we're doing for the first time, because this story is nothing short of amazing and you guys do not want to miss this. So this will be a part 2. This is part 1. Please stay tuned. Do not miss episode 2.
Post-P Chronicles. You got to hear the second half. We'll be back.
Stay tuned.